Hello, welcome to another PH video blog. Today's question, is the RF, the MX-5, for people who hate MX-5s? Well, with this coupe look the retractable fastback gives it, it's certainly got a very different appearance from the soft top that people throw the predictable hairdresser car jibes at. Basically, it's the same as the 2-litre Sport soft top, so it's got the 160 horsepower engine, it's got the Sport suspension with the Bilstein dampers. The suspension's been retuned a little bit for this car, I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. It has, of course, this metal hardtop. It's aluminium in the middle, it's got a steel rollover hoop, and then it's got plastic for these very distinctive buttresses. Overall, it's about 45 kilos heavier than the equivalent soft top. That's not too bad really, considering what you get. It's still less than 1200 kilos, so that's a pretty light car overall. Is it a good looking one? Well, it's a little bit sensitive to where you look at it from. I think from this angle, it looks pretty smart. I think that coupe stance gives it a very different look from the soft top. From some other angles it looks a little bit gawky though. I think there's maybe a little too much height in the roofline, maybe a bit too much wheel arch. I'd like to see it on some lowered suspension. I think that would probably make quite a big difference to the way it looks. But overall, it's the MX-5 that most of us at least know and love. So it's got the zingy naturally aspirated engine, it's got the rear wheel drive balance, and it's got that lovely 6-speed manual gearbox. Saying all that, I think I better go for a drive. So does the addition of a whole new coupe look and that flying buttress shape add a whole new dimension to the MX-5 experience? One enough to overcome all those stereotypes and preconceptions so many people have about the car? No, not really, because let's face it, this is still an MX-5. It's still not particularly powerful. It's only 160 horsepower, as I say, even in this most potent 2-litre form. It is not going to trouble the skins of many rice puddings, and it's still got that kind of cutesy image that people who find that troubling to their masculinity are going to hate. So it's not going to overturn any stereotypes. Let's get that clear. What it does do, however, is it kind of gives the MX-5 a different vibe. I know it's only superficial, it's only looks, but it does give it a slightly more coupe-ish look, and it puts a bigger distance between this folding hardtop version and the conventional Roadster. That's good, because previously they were just a bit too similar. I think that's probably why so many people in the latter years of the NC version went for the folding hardtop. They thought, well, why bother getting a soft top? It looks just the same. It gets better weather protection and all the rest of it. I'll just go for the hardtop. So yes, I like the fact that there's now a much bigger difference between the two cars. Does that translate to a difference in the way that they drive and their character on the road? Well, with the roof up, it definitely does feel a bit more like a proper coupe. And you look out the back and you've got the buttresses in the mirror and all that kind of thing. So you get a feeling of being in a slightly different car with a different atmosphere. It's pretty refined. They've put more sound deadening in. That accounts for quite a bit of the extra 45 kilos that cars are carrying. So there's more soundproofing in the roof, there's more soundproofing in the transmission tunnel, the wheel arches, things like that. Basically, they've tried to make it feel a bit more refined, I think, maybe a little bit more grown up, because I think they expect people to be using it a little bit more as an everyday car rather than a weekend runabout. And it's refined enough. It's not, as I say, it's not going to overturn any preconceptions about this being anything but a fairly light and flimsy is not the right word, but you know what I mean, a Japanese car, shall we say. It's not a kind of, it's not going to tempt anybody out of a Z4 or anything like that, let's say. It's still an MX-5, but that to me is a good thing. So with the roof up, does that cure any of the kind of body shimmy that you get in the Roadster? Does it suddenly turn it into a taut, driver-focused coupe? Maybe a little bit. I think there's maybe a little bit more body stiffness with the roof up. It does help, I think. We'll have to say, I'll put the roof down in a minute. We'll see if that makes any difference to the way it drives with it open-topped. Mazda has changed some of the suspension settings a little bit. They're kind of minor tweaks, really. They have tweaked the front anti-roll bar, made it a bit stiffer, softened the rear bump stops, played with the big cross member, stiffening cross member under the body. Now that would suggest that maybe they've tried to make the car a little bit more neutral, maybe slightly less focused, but then there's all sorts of things going on there about the torsional stiffness, the front to back stiffness that they're tuning. So overall, I think it's probably pretty much the same. It does do cheeky little skids now and then if you feel like it. This sport version's got the Torsen limited slip diff, of course, that's very welcome. So it definitely feels rear wheel drive, that's good. Turning's really nice. The steering's been, the tuning of the e-pass system has been modified a little bit, and so I think that's probably trying to replicate the feel of a non-assisted system. It's pretty good, but what you get from an MX-5 is just everything feels really nicely harmonised, and I think what's good is that if the steering's light and the pedals are light and everything else have that kind of lack of inertia about them, it's because the car is light, and that it's not contrived by overly assisted power steering or trick suspension or anything like that. It's because it is a light car, and that's really, really nice. It's really refreshing. That and the fact that you have to rev this engine is also really nice. This, as we've discovered with other examples of this car, they certainly improve with a bit of age, with some miles on them, but in this day and age where you're used to cars that have, you know, given everything by 1500 revs, it's a real joy to get in a car that you have to wring its neck a bit, because really this car only starts giving its best once you get beyond about 3000 revs, and it'll happily sing out all the way to 7000 RPM. It'll give you all that all the way up to the red line, and that's quite different in this day and age. It really stands out, I've got to say, because most people are used to turbos, they're used to diesels, they're not used to having to work for it, but given how nice the gear shift is, how nice all the controls are, that's really no chore whatsoever. Now then, let's try it with the roof down, shall we? See if it still does the MX-5 thing. So, so now we're back to the MX-5 that we kind of know and love, really. Open top. I think I'm going to put the seat heaters on a bit because it's middle of January on Dartmoor and the sheep here are really not interested in, there we go, yep, okay. So seat heaters are really good, they're really fierce actually. They will actually fry your ass if you leave them on the full setting, I think. So but that's always been one of the great things about MX-5s. They're designed to be driven with the roof down, they're designed to be enjoyed with the roof down. So having put that down, I can definitely feel a little bit more shimmy through the body than I had before. That's kind of to be expected, really, and pretty much like the Roadster, so it's not been transformed in that respect. Certainly you do have the choice a bit. I think with the roof up, does it feel like a GT86 all of a sudden? No, it doesn't, and if you want a sharper driving car of this type, then probably GT86 or of course the Subaru BRZ equivalents are probably still the cars to go for. But it's an MX-5 with a broader range of abilities, or at least atmosphere, that's probably the way to put it. Is it an MX-5 to overturn all those prejudices? Like we said, is it the MX-5 for MX-5 haters? Probably not really. I don't think it really overturns any prejudices. It kind of does what MX-5s have always done, just a little bit different. Is it an MX-5 for people who love MX-5s? Now weirdly, I'm not even sure that it is, because if, like me, you love MX-5s, you'd probably still go for the Roadster version. But I think credit to Mazda, as I say, for putting that bigger gap between this car and the Roadster. It's made a broader range for the MX-5, it gives us more choice, and I think this is a really sweet little car.